What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals. This is brought to you by Inquire Hire. My name is Inquire, and as always, we appreciate the support of all of you listening today. So today's guest has over 12 years of experience in working with nonprofit organizations, and also has the extensive volunteer record to back that up. So with the multitude of areas that she's worked in, she's gotten to a point where she has taken the leap to start her own business in consulting nonprofit organizations. So it's going to be really cool to hear her perspective of just being an expert in the field, and then now being a businesswoman and seeing how she's putting those two things together. So let's welcome Rashidah Butler-Jackson to the show. How are you doing today, Rashidah?
I am good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks to you for your time, as always. So we start the show the same way. We're going to ask you, who is Rashidah Butler-Jackson?
Yes. So lately, I've had this huge focus on being a mommy. So that is like one of the more exciting roles that I play. My baby boy will be 2 in January. So Selvin, when you reached out and were like, can we do this podcast? I was like, absolutely, because I love talking to adults, because I feel like so much of my time is occupied by my toddler right now. So I'm a mom. I'm a wife to Marcel Jackson. I'm a woman of God. I'm a daughter of God. I am a community liaison and advocate. I love Milwaukee. I don't ascribe to any of the negative stereotypes and the negative reputation that we get. I think this community and this city is amazing. So I'm a homegrown girl. I'm a proud Rufus King alumni. So shout out to the generals out there listening. Went to UWM for undergrad and graduate. I love to write. I love to read. I love to sleep. I love to cook. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. Most importantly, I am constantly evolving. And so I acknowledge that like who I am today the answer might be different tomorrow, but I'm embracing all of that as it comes. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love right from the jump that you're like,
yes.
Milwaukee's my great city. And the fact that you are always changing, this is a journey that we're all on as far as trying to figure out who we are, whether we do know what
Definitely.
we're doing or not. So, and I can attest to the fact that, we have an almost 1-year-old. So congratulations on your little one. And so we're trying to, juggle him. Absolutely. So I appreciate that thorough introduction, just letting everybody know who you are as a person. So getting into, your studies, you started off in communications. And so, as you were kind of going through the program, was, getting into community-based work, anywhere in your plan, or was that something that just kind of came naturally as things progressed for you?
Great question. So my mom and my dad are very much so community-oriented individuals. My dad owns a community bookstore that he's owned since 1996, Personality. And so we have always been like immersed in community and people, and like especially our people and our history and our culture. So it kind of just came naturally and made sense. I didn't think it would spin the way that it has, especially in recent years with community engagement, but definitely I think it was kind of in the cards for me in some way, shape, or form, because it's always like, oh, that's Brother Earl's daughter, that's Sister Clara's daughter. Like people know my parents and the work that they've done in the community. My brother, people may or may not know, Ajamu Butler with Heal the Hood, Milwaukee. So it's just kind of in us to give back to the community that's given back so much to us,
Nice. And so you've just really been exposed to that just from being, someone who has seen your parents do all these great things. And then now, you and your siblings are doing all these things for the community now.
Yep, it's all we know. It's kind of all we know. So it only makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome. So, and I can guess that because you having these positive influences growing up when it came to the community work, that was part of what drew you into working with these organizations. Were there any other influences that were a part of why you started the work that you do?
I think it's kind of what you said. Growing up, I didn't have like uncles or aunts. Like my dad has one brother. My mom has a brother who has passed on, who's in a different state. So we didn't have a big family. We didn't have a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles. So I just always remember growing up, I had a lot of community TTs and community uncles. And I always looked at them and said, I love the work that they do. I want to make an impact. I remember like how I felt having adults in the community that I trusted, especially in high school and middle school, and how important that was to know that anywhere I went, I was looked out for and people cared about me. And it really was neighborhood. Like it wasn't just like the hood, it was neighborhood, neighborhood, neighborhood. So I can't think of one specific person, but I always appreciated growing up that I had community and I knew that I was safe and I knew that people were making good choices and like making the community better. We did community cleanups and there was barbecues every weekend and block parties and, being involved in church growing up. So yeah, I think it was just, again, all around me. And I just always said to myself, I want to continue to keep that going for young people when I get older and make sure that I can be a trusted adult or influence in the communities that they live in.
Yeah. We
So
always loved hearing the pay it forward mindset, and it sounds like
yes.
you're 100% with that. So
Yes.
it's pretty cool to see that, not only just kind of growing up, but being able to be in that position of those that you looked up to, still keeping that village environment, with the city that you live in, and being able to, hopefully influence those who will be coming after you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have any more to add to that?
No, I mean, I think also being a mom, like you're a parent, so understanding that you also just want to create the world that you want your child to grow up in. So especially since from the day I found out I was pregnant, I feel like there was a different motivation. And I actually started my business at the end of my pregnancy because it was a motivation for me to support and invest in community organizations and social entrepreneurs who were doing good work in this community. So like I said, as you grow and change, those influences and those motivators continue to change, but it's always grounded in, like you said, paying it forward and just creating the communities that we want to see for ourselves and our families. So
Absolutely. That's really good to hear.
yeah.
So now, putting that experience of, really being out in the community and eventually doing volunteer work to, to actually working a position where you're, that's really geared towards the community. You also took that extra step to get your, advance your education and, go through a grad program that's specifically about, how nonprofits work and everything. So can you talk to that experience and how important that was to the work that you do now?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I have always been super interested in just like giving back, giving back, giving back. How does that work? What does that look like? In college, I was a part of BSU, which was super grounded in community work and volunteerism. In high school, I was in different clubs and stuff. So I've always been interested in this concept of like giving back, like I said, building up community, things like that. So after I got my undergraduate degree, and this is a life lesson because it happens more often than we like to acknowledge, I realized that just because I had my degree in something, it didn't mean that I had to like do that thing for the rest of my life. And I still use my journalism degree because I write and I, do speaking engagements. And so I use my journalism degree all the time, but journalism just wasn't what I wanted to do. And what I realized, because at the time I was working for the Boys and Girls Club, is like, I love this organization. I love these kids. I love what these people do. I love how I've been able to grow professionally and just like have this impact. I feel like I'm just making a difference. And I wanted to understand more of like, how does that work? Like, what is a board of directors? I always hear this board of directors concept. What is that? How do they make decisions that impact me as an employee at this organization? So really it was a drive to like want to grow. And I was at the Boys and Girls Club for 6-7 years. So it was such a huge part of my young adult life. And I just wanted to understand the organization better, fundraising, volunteerism, like there are so many components. And I was like, okay, I might want to do this for myself down the line. What can I do? And I knew I didn't want a master's degree. I was like, I cannot commit to that. I can't afford it. but I can do a couple semesters. I can get some networking and a certificate under my belt. And so that was really what it was, is just like loving the organization that I worked for and wanting to immerse myself and understand more of how that organization functioned.
Nice.
And how I could like replicate that or like see that more in the community.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that all the education that you got, that really helped put those things into perspective. Like what is a board of directors, and, what steps do you take to even create an organization like that?
Yeah, exactly. And I found myself being a lot more involved in my work when I understood it more. So like never, my train of thought with that was like, never be afraid to ask questions about how things function and how things work and how we came to be and where does our funding come from, right? Like if we're an organization that's funded on grants, I need to know, how do we get these grants? What did we promise we're going to do? Because that's my position. That's my livelihood. So it's also just better understanding your role and your position in different organizations. And my graduate certificate helped me to understand grants and foundations and funding and fundraising and all of those things that go into making a nonprofit function every day. So
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
good time.
I'm sure it's been a journey, kind of learning that and putting those things into perspective, which, with the things that you've already done. So now when it comes to either, working in or working with nonprofit organizations, we always want our listeners to just be financially aware of those different aspects of whatever career that they're trying to get into. So, out of your experience, what would you say are ways that you felt like you financially prepared with working with these organizations, or what was there any aspect of the finances involved? Was it really just, doing that work for the community? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I definitely would say to people, nonprofit work, and they say it all the time, and it's really true. You don't do it for the money. You do it. It really has to be a drive to want it. And that's not to say you can't make a living and sustain and like have a great lifestyle, but you really do the work because you want to do the work. So for me, I think I just really had to push myself to acknowledge where I was financially, where I wanted to be. And then I had to sit down and say, okay, if I'm working part-time at the Boys and Girls Club, that's not going to cut it, right, for my financial goals. So let me get some mentorship in the organization. Let me start to better understand what roles. Do I want to be an executive director? Do I want to be a finance person? Do I want to just be a program manager or manage a club? And that was the relationship piece of it. So with finances and like making a way in nonprofits, you really have to have a goal for what you want to do with your life and what finances are going to contribute to that. And then set a goal for like, maybe I want to be a club manager because I know they make this much, or maybe I want to do this because I know they make that much. So it was just like me talking to people. And that's how I was able to constantly move up and be really strategic about applying for internal positions and things like that. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't talk to people. Mentorship and relationships are so important, especially in the nonprofit sector. Seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I'm glad that you mentioned the networking piece of that, because there's a lot of things that, especially when it comes to just kind of working in fields, and then even specifically with nonprofit organizations, there's so many aspects to it. And without knowing, or without asking those people, what is the work that you do? How does your piece kind of, build to the grand scheme of things?
Yes.
And, so, I always mention, being an introvert and not, wanting to, not being as inclined to reach out to people. I would definitely, vouch for that aspect of networking, just for the sake of knowledge, just so that where you fit, your best fit, and the different kinds of things that you can do. So, and it sounds like you really did that to make sure that, along with the passionate work that you're doing, you're also setting yourself up financially, which, if you have that in place, you can just put all your focus on that work.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And I was young. I mean, I started working at the Boys and Girls Club when I was 18, 19 years old. So I was still in college and like living at home and catching a bus to campus every day. So I wasn't thinking about budgets, and I was just trying to like make sure my phone bill was paid and make sure, but like also being around all of these really successful people in the nonprofit sector and seeing like, oh my God, these people are loving what they're doing. They're successful. They're making an impact. I want that, right? So like being able to immerse yourself in it and see what's possible helps you to create a vision for yourself sometimes as well. You just got to put yourself out there and see what's out there, because sometimes you don't know until you internally get in there and see what it's all about. So yeah, just pushing yourself, network. I'm an introvert. Surprisingly, most people are like, what, are you really? Yeah, it zaps my energy to deal with people on a day-to-day basis. But I also understand the value of networking, of mentorship, of connecting. And so the values far outweigh my comfort level with putting myself out there, right? So
there you go. Get it done. And it's good to acknowledge that type of thing,
Yeah.
Especially I like the drains your battery, type of analogy. Because I feel that too. I get it. So let's get into your consulting business. So now you've gotten to a point, you mentioned that this was after the birth of your son, that you wanted to take that next step, that next chapter into creating a business that, involves what you love to do, the organizations that you love to work with, and now being not only a pivotal person just in the community, being in the field, working with people, but now working with these organizations and wanting to see them flourish because of what you've seen in your experience. Can you talk about, at what point did you want to make that leap? I know that you said that your son was a motivation. Were there any other things that you were thinking about beforehand when you started this?
Yeah, that's another really great question, that when I saw it beforehand, I was like, oh, that makes me really think. So I think when I went and did my graduate certificate, it kind of started spinning the wheels then of like, I could do this. Like I can help organizations with finances and strategic planning and volunteer stuff. So that idea got sparked years ago. But like I said, I was pregnant and I had a really, tough pregnancy. I was really sick to the point where I was on bed rest. Like my doctor was like, you need to stay home. So unfortunately, I had to quit my job just for my health. And I told my husband, I said, being a mom is great, being a wife is great, but like I still need to feel purpose. I can't just sit around and be a mom and a wife. Those are important. Those are full-time jobs, but I can't lose myself and my passion in like those roles. So I started thinking to myself, do I want to go back and work a 9-to-5? Or do I want to have a further reach? I could work for one organization and do really amazing things and climb the ladder and be great. Or I could put myself out there to make small impact at multiple organizations and broaden the reach. I don't know everything, right? But the things that I do know, because I've been a nonprofit employee for 10 plus years, there's some do's and some don'ts. There's some strategy. I was a teacher for 3 years through Teach for America. So facilitation and data and engagement and all the things you learn from being an educator, those are things that I can share and help people to advance and grow and immerse themselves in this organization. So it really was just like, I wanted to make more impact, and I didn't want to do it sitting behind a desk or like just working a 9-to-5. It was important for us that I stayed home with my son. So that was a big thing for me. But again, Selvin, like we had to plan for that. Financially, we had to say, we got to be at a certain place. Like we got to have these debts paid down, and then I can work from home and like build my business. So everything was really strategic and it worked out. Everything worked out really well. But that was the big thing for me, is like, and I've been able to work with some really cool organizations that have impacted me. I've been able to make some impact with them. And that wouldn't have happened if I was just working with one nonprofit, So
yeah. And you took a very holistic approach with that. You looked at everything that would have surrounded whatever work that you were doing. You acknowledged that you wanted to still keep that purpose in motion, even with whatever life change that you're going to have. And, and that's, I like the flexibility that you've kind of created with that, with that decision making. Obviously you have the support of your husband to do so, and just making sure that all of those things were in place. So I love the aspect of support there. I love the aspect of the holistic thinking and approach for that. And it's good to point those things out, because we can always have focus on one thing. Like, we can just really focus on the money, and then not keep those other things in mind that could follow that, or could go around that. So thanks for explaining that. Now, let's can you give an overview of your business? I think you touched on a few things, but what's the type of work that you do, and then the types of organizations that you do work with.
Thanks for asking that. So one thing I will say is I've been officially in business for 2 years in October, where I really launched and got serious, got my LLC. So my business has shifted a little bit. The pandemic has shifted my business a lot, which with many small businesses, and that's the other thing, we have to acknowledge and be able to be flexible with our plans and our visions, because obviously pandemics happen and political things happen and social justice movements happen, and that shifts us in our jobs and our careers and our lives. So I started off saying I want to only work with nonprofits. That is my passion. That's what I want to do. And then along the line, some opportunities fell into my lap, and I was like, okay, I can shift that to community organizations, right? So you don't have to be a nonprofit. You just need to be an organization, a smaller organization, or a community-based organization. So my rule of thumb is this: if you are an organization that is doing good work in the city of Milwaukee, I will work with you, whether you are a nonprofit or whether you are a for-profit. And that has opened the door for me in so many ways. So one part of my business kind of has two arms. The first arm is I help people to start their own nonprofits, which is really, really cool, because I have had people that say, I'm super passionate about this thing. I don't see anybody else in the community doing it. What can I do to answer that call? So I help people find their board of director members. I help people write their bylaws. I help people do their application through the state and through the IRS. And I really help people to walk into their purposes and walk into those visions and goals that they have for themselves and for the community. And that has been amazing. That's a smaller portion of my business, but it is something that I do pretty consistently. So the other arm of my business is I do a lot of training and development. So especially over the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of virtual trainings. I offer soft skills training. I offer communication trainings. I offer grant writing training. So I've been doing a lot of that with different organizations and individuals. And then I also do a lot of strategic planning. So right now, with the city of Milwaukee, I'm doing a strategic planning project with a colleague of mine, and we're working to address the STI rates in the city, which are still ridiculously high and out of control. And so we're doing a strategic plan with different stakeholders through the city to address that issue, which has not gone away because of the pandemic, right? It's still very real. And so that's my other arm of it, is just working with organizations to do data and evaluation and strategic planning, and then supporting with facilitation and training and development. So dealing with organizations holistically to just help them to improve and present themselves and connect to the community and things like that. So those are the two big things that I focus on. I also do career coaching and things like that, but that's on a more individual basis than it is organizational.
Okay. So. Yeah. And I think just having those two aspects working those two together is a really dope approach for those organizations. And it goes back to the point that you made about getting this, degree in journalism and, not feeling discouraged that you're not using it in the most direct way, but in the sense of the grant writing and, I'm sure there's some type of, communication that organization has to make out to the people. You have those skills from that degree, and you're now coupling it with, that certificate that you got and your experience. And now it's come together, even if you didn't plan that, 10 plus years or whatever the case is, it all came together. And, I definitely don't want people to be discouraged if they are getting into a career and or a degree rather, and they, start to get a little bit deeper, and then they figure out that they're not going to use it, but you have that opportunity to eventually use it. You just might not know it at that point.
Exactly. And let me say this too, Selvin, the connections that I got in undergraduate, there were skill sets and disciplines that I learned about myself, time management, getting my assignments in time. Like I said, joining those different organizations on campus was of immense value to me. So again, even like you said, if I'm not using that journalism degree front facing every single day, there are still so many skills and concepts. And like I'm connected with some of my professors from undergraduate school to this day. They write me letters of recommendation. They supported different endeavors I've had. So college is not just about like get a degree, make a lot of money, use the degree, and life.
Mm-hmm.
It's about all the other experiences and the character that you build. Like there's so much character building that happened in those 4 years that was worth the money and the time in itself. So, even if I never go into the field of journalism, that degree was worth it for everything else. And so again, do not be discouraged.
Yeah.
Do not think you have to have it figured all out, because things are going to shift. Life is going to shift,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, let's kind of get into, some of the experiences that you've had when it comes to misconceptions with nonprofit organizations. And you can speak to this definitely with the work that you have done with those nonprofit organizations. What are some of those common misconceptions that maybe either the people in the orgs have, or even people outside of the orgs have? What have you kind of run into that you may have had to address in that consulting work?
Oh my goodness. So many. Do we have time?
Let's go.
Okay. My gosh. So this is another great question. And I could write a thesis on misconceptions in the nonprofit world, because there are so many. A lot of people think, for example, that nonprofits only get funded through grants. Like you can't have a nonprofit unless you get a grant from the city or the state or the government. That is not true. Many nonprofits get private funding. Many nonprofits do annual or biannual fundraising events to get funding. So if you're not a grant writer or you don't feel like you have enough experience in grants and the grant writing world, that doesn't mean you can't be in nonprofits. There are still so many other ways that nonprofits are funded, right? So that's a big misconception. You don't just have to be funded by grants. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I'll talk about is people think that nonprofits are just about serving kids and serving families and community. Sometimes nonprofits are about solving a really specific problem. So there are nonprofits that provide training to individuals working in the community. So they might not be doing direct work in the community. They might not be a food pantry. They might not work with young people. As long as your nonprofit solves a problem, it can be a nonprofit. So there's this you know what I mean? Oh, I have to be a Boys and Girls Club, or I have to be a food pantry, or I have to be a church. And it's you could be a nonprofit that helps kids get eyeglasses because they're, or you can be a nonprofit that helps people learn how to write cursive because that's a foreign thing for people nowadays. As long as you're solving a problem and contributing in a positive way to the community, you can have or be a part of a nonprofit. So that's a big one too, where people are I have this really great idea, but I can't make it a nonprofit. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. So that is another one. And then I'll say another misconception about nonprofits is this concept of you have to be broke to work at a nonprofit, and nonprofits don't make any money and you can't be successful.
Yeah.
Some of the most successful people I know work in nonprofits. They're happy, they're families, they own homes, they have, nice vehicles, and they still do meaningful work. And let's be clear, success is defined as a lot of different ways. I'm just giving examples of those material things, but you don't have to be broke to work at a nonprofit. I make a very decent living doing what I do. I always my bills were paid. I had food on my table and I loved what I did. So those are a couple that I hear all the time. It's just like, I can't work in nonprofits because y'all and teachers don't make no money. And it's like, yeah, we don't make enough money, but we make enough to make a decent living. So
Right.
don't let that discourage you for feeling like you can't survive if you work at a nonprofit, but you're doing good work, so it's all worth it. No, you can have a good life and work at a nonprofit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Those are just a few that I come up against. I feel like weekly, I have those types of conversations with people. So,
Okay. No,
yeah.
and thank you for that. The money one is definitely one that I've heard
Ugh,
before.
yes.
And because you have that ability, and I'm glad that you explained it, to be as creative or be as specific as to the issue that you want to address, then you have those opportunities. Like, and you mentioned the opportunity to have that private funding. There are those, organizations that may not be from some type of government entity that
Mhm.
can fully support what you do. Maybe it's based off of the principles that they have that align with yours, and
Yeah.
you can have that relationship with them. So thanks for giving us those examples, especially
Yeah.
if those are the ones that are discouraging folks from actually getting into that type of work.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
it's actually better, as like the last nonprofit I worked for before I started my own business, they were majority private funded. Like we have very few grants, and we were a fully functional staff of 10 making an impact across the state of Wisconsin doing financial literacy programming with mostly, I think it was like 90% private funding. So, and the nonprofit has existed for over 10 years. They've been really successful. So, and it's also better because with grant funding, grants come and go. So
Mhm.
also understanding that sometimes it's better for nonprofits to have private funding with few restrictions, versus a grant that funding is going to go away in a year. Then you have to reapply and you don't know if you're going to get it or not. Your job is dependent on that grant. So I always encourage people to like be open and understanding of all the funding sources so that you
Mhm.
don't limit yourself and put yourself in a box with funding.
Absolutely.
So
Thank
it's a
you for
little
that.
tidbit. Yes.
Yeah. Have an open
That's
mind.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having an open
Yeah.
mind, the money side. And, just in your case where you kind of opened it up to, community based and not just necessarily nonprofits, that opened up
Hmm.
those opportunities for you for just being open minded. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Now let's take a step into the direction of just kind of you personally, just kind of looking at yourself, looking at the influence that you have, especially being a Black woman, being a mom, being a community leader, and seeing all the experience that you've had, seeing that you work that you've done, the work that you're doing now. Have you ever taken a step back to kind of look at all that and see what your influence is? I know it's hard for me specifically because we can just be swamped up in the work that we do and just kind of keep going, and not. It's a little bit harder to take that step back and kind of look at everything, especially if that helps you change or move in a direction that will take you to the next level. So have you ever kind of looked at yourself and say, okay, this is the influence that I have. Now I can take this next step. Have you ever, taken those steps at any point?
Yeah, definitely. And especially being an entrepreneur, and working in nonprofits, which is an ever changing sector, you have to be in constant, celebrating yourself because life gets hard, the work gets hard, it's heavy. Doing nonprofit work means you're solving a problem. And there's a lot of empathy that goes into being connected with problems that exist in the world, especially if it's something that you've been directly impacted by or people you love are being impacted by. So you have to stop and just celebrate small wins, small successes. But I think we spend so much time trying to quantify and write down what we're doing well and what we need to do different. And for me, I just focus on the people.
Mhm.
When I see people that I work with and when I see organizations that I work with, I see aha moments happening. Those are my wins. Those are my successes. I see people saying, I feel more empowered as an employee to get more professional development, to get that certificate, to go after that position. Those are my wins. So I call it feed forward. I'm learning not to call it feedback. I like this term of feed forward.
Mm.
Like I'm giving myself these tips and tricks and reflecting, and then I'm seeing how I can constantly move forward. I do a lot of evaluation. So any client I work with, I'm asking them to evaluate me. Tell me what I did well. Tell me how you've grown as a person or an organization. And I look at that and I'm constantly saying, that's not the outcome I wanted. I wanted more for them. Or yes, we hit it on the head. Like we're doing good. So yeah, I do it all the time. When I think about the influence, I don't. Like I probably should, but I'm just so busy doing the work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think you know how that goes. Like you're
Absolutely.
just so busy doing what you love and doing what's important. You don't often think about like, oh, a life was impacted. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm challenging myself more to do that, right? And like we should all be doing that. If one person listens to this podcast and their life is changed and they have that light bulb moment or that influential moment, we've done our job today, right? Like today, we've done our job, we've accomplished something. And so
Yeah.
just taking those small wins and constantly getting feedback. I talk to my husband all the time because he's like a professional branding coach. And so I'm one of his clients. He doesn't let me pay him. I try, he won't let me. So it's fine. But just like also your sphere of influence. So having people around you to give you real and honest and raw feedback, because sometimes we can't see it for ourselves. So I'm constantly talking to my friends and my mentors and saying, what am I doing well? What do I need to be doing better? And that has been such a huge impact as well. So you need to have a good sphere of influence of people that are going to be honest with you. We don't need yes people. We need people that are going to know what we do, know what we're passionate about, and continue to push us forward.
Perfect. And even
Yeah.
to take another step into that, now you've had the fortunate opportunity of being surrounded by all those positive influences growing up, and then
Yes.
continuing that, through school, through your career, and then even so now. Now there might be those who are listening who might not have as great of support around them or those influences. What would you advise for those individuals to to seek those positive influences? It might be a little bit tough for them to do that, but what type of advice would you give to them to kind of get them more in a positive circle?
Yeah, so there are, and I just want to encourage anyone who feels like that, know that you are not alone. You are valued, you matter, you are important, regardless of the support that you do or do not feel. So I just want to say that for anyone that applies to.
Yeah.
But there are so many organizations in the city of Milwaukee that focus on mentorship for young people. There are free and low cost programs. So there's Greater Milwaukee, the Greater Milwaukee Mentorship Program is something that exists. Running Rebels, the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Like there are so many organizations that young people can be a part of. And then even moving into college, there are mentorship programs. There are a ton of different cool things that you can get involved in. So if you can't find that support in your immediate circle, don't be afraid to seek outside. Google mentoring in Milwaukee. And if you just smartphone, computer, Google that, I promise you 4 or 5 reputable organizations or individuals are going to pop up, and attach yourself to those. Like some of my best supporters are not the people that are closest to me. They're people I had to go seek out. There are people I had to connect with on LinkedIn or Facebook. And those are the people that have stuck with me on this journey. So know that there are always free, low-cost resources, and don't do it for the money. A lot of people at those organizations do it. They're volunteering their time. They do it because they're passionate. If you're in church or if you have other religious affiliations, talking to youth pastors or youth leaders in those religious organizations, there's always an outlet. But most of all, just stay encouraged and know that you have everything that you need inside of you to propel yourself. And I'm always a resource as well. If you want to reach out to me, if you need a motivational speaking opportunity or like want me to just talk some life into you, I can do that as well. I'm down for that. Like what? Let's do it.
There you go.
But just know that there are resources out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would say that that's definitely not limited to just Milwaukee. You've got the opportunities everywhere. You could Google,
Yes.
mentoring Chicago or mentoring Los Angeles or New York or wherever you live, and find some organization that you can start to gravitate towards and be able to get that encouragement that may be harder to seek with your, like you said, immediate circle. So thanks for
Yeah.
pointing that out. Now, for anybody who has the idea or the desire to start their own business or start their own organization, and I know that you have some resources on your website outside of the real specific services that you have, but what type of advice would you give to somebody, someone who's 16 or 17, maybe even thinking about this, or someone who's in college and they're looking to take whatever passion or interest to that level where they can have that full control and that reach that, best case scenario is unlimited. What type of advice would you give to them, for those very first steps?
I love that you said unlimited because that is key. It's like, yes, y'all can do it. So I would say, one, do your research. Like, we all have really great ideas. We all have ways that we want to make impact, but there are over 1.5 million registered nonprofits in the United States. Okay. So even if you have a great idea, you want to make sure that there's not another organization, whether you're starting a business, for profit or nonprofit, that's doing what you're trying to do. And if there are businesses doing what you're trying to do, attach yourself to those businesses. Go volunteer at those organizations. Seek some mentorship out. Like, your nonprofit or your business is more likely to be successful if you have a unique idea. You don't want to increase your competition or increase the likelihood that, you won't get the support that you need or deserve. So just do your research, first of all. And if there are things out there similar to what you're trying to do, talk to those people who are running those organizations, figure out how your business can be different, what's going to make you stand out. When we're applying for grants and business loans, people want to see why am I giving you money? Why is your business different than the 100 other applications that have come across my desk today for people asking for money? So you want to be able to say, this is my vision, this is my passion, this is my spin on it, and this is how I'm going to make an impact. So that's number one. Do your research, know what else is out there. The other thing that I will say is be prepared to be flexible. Like, I think a lot of times we get these pretty business plans and we're so set on, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this much money this year. This is who I'm going to work with. And then things don't work and we don't have a backup plan. And I don't want you to have a backup plan because I believe you're going to fail. I want you to have a business plan because I want you to understand that there are multiple ways to get to a destination. So I want you to be prepared to say, well, maybe I need to open it up, or maybe I need to shift something. As long as your vision and your mission stay the same, you need to be open to being as flexible as possible to reach that. So I just told you all, I started off only nonprofits, and then, God opened things up for me. And now I'm working with the City of Milwaukee Health Department, which is huge, right? Like, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I limited myself to like only this thing or only that. So those are my two big things: is be open to being flexible with keeping your morals and your vision in place. And then also do your research. That is huge.
Perfect. Great points to
Yes.
make. Now, in line of research, I know that Google is a great source, and we fortunately have other different resources that we can look to: books, audiobooks, things like that. Do you have any book recommendations just for any of our listeners? Maybe something that's easy learning, whether it's something they're actually reading or listening to get them either in the mindset of being successful, or even if it's something specifically towards nonprofits. What would you recommend?
So there's a podcast by Joan Gary, and it is called Nonprofits Are Messy. And this is like, it's geared towards nonprofits, but I've also learned that, like, as a business person that's not a nonprofit, I have learned so much from her. So she does a lot of focusing on the different parts of nonprofits and how they function: diversity in nonprofits, financing and fundraising in nonprofits. She talks about the volunteer space with nonprofits, just a ton of, she has a really good diverse number of guests and speakers that she has on, and it's always really fun and informative. So Joan Gary, Nonprofits Are Messy. Even if you're not going into nonprofit, I suggest you check out a couple of the episodes, because nonprofits are still businesses. So there are still some key things that you're going to get from that podcast that can be applied to a for-profit or a nonprofit. And that's the thing too, is another misconception or myth. Nonprofits are still a business. You're still trying to, make money to provide services. You still file taxes every year. Nonprofits are still businesses. So yes, Nonprofits Are Messy, Joan Gary, that is one that I have been listening to for a while, and it has been amazing for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So now, before we wrap up everything, it's, you've mentioned, flexibility. You've, tried to kind of work around, especially with this pandemic happening, and trying to, keep things afloat. And, I think we all have our challenges when it comes to that, whether we do have a business or not. So one day everything's going to kind of get back to normal. So, once we get to that point, we're crossing. Once we get to that point, what's going to be your first activity that you do? I know for us here, we went to a pumpkin patch, and we were still kind of weary about that because there was a lot of people there. We're like, but what's going to be the first activity that you do? Something that you've done before, not have to worry about, washing your hands and wearing a mask. What's going to be that first thing that you do?
So we had our 3-year anniversary this year for marriage, and we had a fully paid Selvin. Resort was paid for, flights were paid for to Jamaica, and then the pandemic hit, and our anniversary was at the end of July. And so in April, we were like, oh, it's fine. This is going to pass. And then May came, and I was like, okay, Marcel, we might need to, and then we just canceled everything. So I am owed an international trip without my child, just me and my husband and the beach and the resort. And that is, as soon as this is over, we are rebooking that flight. We've got our credits and everything. And I can't wait. I'm so ready to just specifically Jamaica. I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to go to Jamaica. That is what I want to do. But like you said, even just stuff with my son. So when we're at the park, if other kids come and they don't have on masks or whatever, we leave, or we kind of go to another area, because like you said, just small things that we took for granted, we can't do anymore. So yeah, just going to the gym and not having to wear a mask and be passing out because you can't breathe, little things like that as well. But I need my anniversary trip.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on 3 years, and I'm sure once you get to that point, it's gonna be that much more meaningful because of the interruption, and then actually getting back to booking. I think is going to definitely be one to remember, even if it's even if it happens at the 4 years. So hopefully it happens sooner than later. But that's definitely awesome. For me, I think I'll keep it simple. I don't watch movies that often, but I love the experience of going to a theater. And it's and now, especially with with our kids, and I'm sure once our 1-year-old gets a little bit older and he calms down a little bit, then it's going to be a good experience. But for us four to make that first trip to the movie theater and just have that experience, I think it's going to be crazy good. So
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
That is a really good one.
Yeah,
because it's just not the same on your TV. We've been renting a lot of the movies from Fantastic, but that is a good one. The snacks and the big screen and I'm adding that to my list too. Movies.
There you go. Yes. So we're all waiting for that sense of normalcy, where we don't have to think twice. So but thank you, Rashidah, you've been awesome. You have had a lot of great information. I do appreciate your time. Before we do wrap things up, let the people know where they can reach you, your website and everything that you do.
Yes. So before I do that, I just have to thank you. I think I was telling you before we started recording, I have learned so much. Selvin, seriously, I've been tuning into these different podcasts, and you think about careers, and you think you've interviewed several people I know, and I was I didn't even realize he did that. I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? It gets really deep, and so thank you for this vision. this is really unique. I don't see a lot of this type of thing for young people and young adults. And so I just think it's so cool. And I'm grateful that you even considered me. So thank you for what you are doing. Keep it up. It is needed. It is necessary. And I pray many more blessings and episodes and impact and all of that good stuff. So I just had to say that.
I appreciate
because it's been really great. Like, I have subscribed and I'm tuning in to all of what you're sharing.
Nice.
I can be reached. So I have a website. It's a work in progress, so no judgment, but check it out. It's www.rbjcommunity.com. So that's www.rbjcommunity.com. You can also reach me. I know a lot of these will be younger people, so you might not have a LinkedIn, but I believe in professionally connecting with people. So especially when you all are that age, because it doesn't hurt to start getting some mentorship and networking. So if you have a LinkedIn, you can add me at just Rashidah Butler-Jackson. And then you can also email me anytime at rbjcommunity@gmail.com.
Perfect.
So that's how you can reach me. I'm out here. I'm available. Like I said, I'm stuck with my toddler. So I want to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me, who is not two. So feel free to email me, check out my website, check out my services. And if you have any questions that I can answer, please, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Again, Rashidah, thanks for your time. Thank you everybody for listening. As always, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We are always looking for your feedback and your feed forward. You can also reach us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can check out our website. That's inquirehire.com. We've got a lot of great information there, a lot of articles. You can actually see the episodes of this podcast there. And we specialize in college preparation. So if you have any questions in regards to any point, whether you are in 9th grade trying to figure out what you want to do, or if you are, right on the brink of getting onto campus and you're trying to figure out all the things that you need to get together, we would love to help you with that. So please feel free to reach out to us, check out what we can help you with, and, we can definitely be a resource to you. So until next time, take care and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.